Have you ever observed how some individuals can step into a room, say just a few words, and suddenly everyone is hanging on their every utterance? Meanwhile, others, no matter how hard they try, just end up being ignored, talked over, or dismissed. Here's the surprising part. It's not about being the loudest, the smartest, or the most experienced. It's all about how you speak. In this video, I'm going to reveal some powerful speaking techniques that will make people respect you, whether you're talking to a crowd or one-on-one. Some of these tips will make you nod in agreement, others might make you squirm, but I promise they will change how people perceive you. Are you ready to level up your voice? Let's dive in. First up, let's tackle the "I'm sorry" habit. You've probably heard it before, but let me say it again. Stop apologizing for every little thing. It's not charming, it's not polite, and honestly, it's not helping you gain respect. I know it sounds harsh, but hear me out. When you apologize unnecessarily, you're not being polite. You're undermining your own presence. It's as if you're telling the world, "Don't take me seriously. I'm assuming I'm wrong before you even say anything." You're giving others permission to walk all over you. Think about this scenario. You walk into a room, say, "Sorry, I'm late," even though you're only 2 minutes behind and traffic was terrible. Now, you've just framed yourself as the problem, even though circumstances beyond your control caused the delay. Or picture this. Someone bumps into you, and without thinking, you blurt out, "Sorry." What exactly are you apologizing for? Being in the same space as them. Let me tell you about the time I realized I had a full-blown sorry addiction. I was in a meeting, and someone interrupted me. Without thinking, I said, "Oh, sorry. Go ahead." Why on earth was I apologizing for being interrupted? That moment was a wake-up call for me. From that day on, I made a conscious effort to stop apologizing unnecessarily. Whenever I was about to say sorry, I asked myself, do I actually owe anyone an apology, or am I just trying to diffuse the situation? Spoiler, 90% of the time, there was no reason to apologize. Constantly apologizing when it's unnecessary isn't just a bad habit, it's a mindset. It's like you're apologizing for your existence, for taking up space, for simply being human. And guess what? If you keep doing it, people will start to believe you. They'll see you as someone who doesn't value themselves enough to stand tall, someone who is always in the wrong. But here's the truth. You have every right to take up space, to have opinions, to make mistakes. Respect doesn't come from saying sorry. It comes from owning your presence, your thoughts, and even your imperfections. So what can you say instead? Let's rewrite the script. Instead of saying, "Sorry, I'm late," try saying, "Thank you for waiting." Instead of "Sorry for bothering you," say, "Do you have a moment?" And instead of "Sorry, can I add something?" go with, "I'd like to add something." See how this shifts the energy? Now you sound confident and respectful, without apologizing for your mere existence. Next time you're about to say sorry, pause and ask yourself, do I really need to apologize, or am I just trying to make myself smaller? Respect starts with how you respect yourself. Stop apologizing unnecessarily, and you'll be amazed at how differently people start seeing and hearing you. Now let's move on to another key point, setting boundaries. If you're not setting boundaries, you're not being selfless, you're being spineless. Yes, I said it. Think about it. How many times have you said yes to something you didn't want to do just to keep the peace? How often have you let someone overstep your limits because you didn't want to seem difficult? Boundaries aren't just a luxury, they're a necessity for respect. The reality is, boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about teaching people how to engage with you respectfully. Think of them like the rules of your personal game. No boundaries, no rules. And without rules, people will treat you however they please. Trust me, that rarely ends well for you. When you don't set boundaries, you're essentially saying your comfort is more important than my peace of mind. Sound familiar? That's why you're stuck answering texts at 2 a.m. or working late because someone else dropped the ball on their part of the project. Here's where it gets tough. When you start setting boundaries, people are going to get upset. Why? Because they've gotten used to you bending over backward for them. I've been there. There was a time when a close friend asked me to help them move, but I already had other plans. They hit me with a guilt trip. "Wow, I thought you were someone I could count on." For a moment, I almost caved. But then I realized this wasn't about me being a bad friend. It was about them not respecting my time. So I stuck to my boundary. Guess what? They found someone else to help, and we're still friends. People will adjust, but only if you stick to your boundaries. I'll never forget the day I realized my lack of boundaries was draining my peace. I had a coworker who regularly dumped last-minute tasks on me. At first I said, "Sure, no problem," because I wanted to be helpful. But after a while I started noticing a pattern. Every time I bailed them out, they'd do it again. One evening, as I stayed late fixing their mistakes, I had an epiphany. I asked myself, why am I putting their disorganization above my own life? The next time they tried it, I said, "I can't help with that right now. You'll need to figure it out." Did they pout? Of course. But I stuck to my boundary. But here's the controversial truth. The pause isn't empty. It's where your power lies. We live in a world where speed is prized. Fast talkers are seen as confident and quick thinkers. But here's the thing. Fast doesn't always equal effective. When you speak too quickly, your words become background noise, something people hear but don't really listen to. A pause, however, forces people to tune in. It creates anticipation. Think of it like music. Imagine a song that's nothing but continuous beats, no pauses or changes. It'd be overwhelming, right? A pause in music creates rhythm, and a pause in speech does the same thing. It's not about saying less, it's about making every word count. I wasn't always a fan of pausing. In fact, I used to be the worst at it. Back in the day, I thought I had to prove myself with a constant stream of words. In meetings, conversations, even dates, I would constantly fill the silence, thinking it would make me look unsure if I didn't. But honestly, all it did was make me come across as exhausting. One time, I was pitching an idea at work. I was so caught up in explaining every little detail that I didn't notice people checking out halfway through. Afterward, my manager pulled me aside and said, "You've got great ideas, but you don't give people time to process them." Ouch, right? That was my wake-up call. I realized I was doing all the work for my audience instead of letting them catch on. When I started practicing pauses, it felt strange at first, really strange. I'd say something, then stop and let it land and immediately want to jump in and explain myself. But over time, I noticed something incredible. People started paying more attention. They weren't zoning out, they were leaning in. They weren't just hearing me, they were listening. The moment that really solidified it for me was when I was giving a presentation. I intentionally slowed down and added pauses after key points. Afterwards, someone came up to me and said, "That was so impactful. I felt like every word mattered." That's when I knew I was onto something. It wasn't just about what I said, it was about how I said it. Here's the deeper lesson. Pausing isn't just about speaking. It's about presence. It's about being so confident in your words that you don't feel the need to fill every moment with noise. A pause says, "I trust my words to speak for themselves." That's a rare kind of confidence, and that's exactly why it commands respect. But it's not only about confidence. Pausing teaches us patience. It forces us to slow down and let things sink in. And let's face it, in a world that's always rushing, there's something powerful about someone who is willing to take their time. It shows they value their words and yours. Now, I know there are critics out there. Some of you are probably thinking, if I pause, people will think I'm lost or unsure. Let me flip that for you. Pausing doesn't make you look uncertain. It makes you look deliberate. It tells people, I'm thinking, I'm intentional, I'm not afraid of a little silence. If someone mistakes that for hesitation, that's their problem, not yours. The art of pausing isn't just about speech, it's about life. It's about knowing when to slow down, when to let things breathe, and when to let silence speak louder than words. So the next time you're tempted to fill the gaps with chatter, resist. Trust the pause. Lean into the discomfort. Because when you master the pause, you don't just earn respect, you own the room. And that's the kind of power you deserve. Humor is like hot sauce. When used appropriately, it enhances everything. But when it's overdone, it can ruin the entire experience. Let's be clear, nothing erodes respect faster than crossing the line from humor into clownish behavior. It may sound harsh, but someone has to say it. So let's dive into how humor can be a tool for success, rather than a ticket to losing credibility. First, let's state the obvious. Humor is a powerful tool. It can break the ice, ease tension, and even make you seem more intelligent. Research supports this, by the way. But here's the twist. Humor can backfire if you're not careful. Overusing jokes, especially self-deprecating ones, or constantly playing the fool can make people see you as, well, a fool. Trust me, no one respects someone who can't gauge when to stop with the jokes. I'll tell you straight up. I've been that guy. The one who always had a joke in my back pocket, even when the situation didn't call for it. I thought I was being charming, but in reality, I was undermining my own credibility. One time during a meeting, I made a joke about my workload, saying something like, "Oh, I'm just here to make spreadsheets look pretty." The room erupted in laughter, but afterward, my manager pulled me aside and said, "You're too good at what you do to downplay yourself like that." That hit me hard. I realized that while humor was getting me attention, it wasn't always the kind of attention I wanted. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting you should turn into a humorless robot. Humor is an incredible way to connect with people and lighten the atmosphere. But here's the crucial part: it must serve a purpose. Are you using humor to form a connection with others, or are you relying on it to distract, deflect, or seek validation? Take self-deprecating humor, for example. It can be great in moderation. It shows humility and relatability. But if you're constantly the butt of your own jokes, people may start to believe it. There's a fine line between laughing with others and giving them permission to laugh at you. The deeper message here is that humor is about timing, intent, and balance. When used thoughtfully, it signals intelligence and confidence. But when it's a crutch, it often reveals insecurity. And I know that because I've been there. There was a time when I used humor to dodge uncomfortable situations. If someone gave me constructive criticism, I'd crack a joke to deflect. If the conversation turned serious, I'd lighten the mood with humor. And you know what happened? People stopped taking me seriously. I learned the hard way that respect isn't earned by being the funniest person in the room. It's earned by knowing when to be serious and when to keep things light. The key is finding that balance. Humor should enhance the conversation, not detract from it. It should foster connection, not distraction. And above all, it should reflect confidence, not insecurity. A well-timed joke can show you're sharp and in control. But an endless stream of jokes can make you appear like you're trying too hard. Let's also talk about the risks of humor. Sarcasm, for example, can either make you seem witty or just plain rude, depending on how it's delivered. The same goes for dark humor. It's crucial to know your audience, and for the love of all that's good, read the room. There's nothing more awkward than a joke that falls flat because it's tone deaf. Humor is a form of communication, and like any other form of communication, it reflects who you are. Are you using it to build others up or to mask your insecurities? Because here's the truth. Respect isn't about how many people laugh at your jokes. It's about how your humor makes them feel. So next time you're about to tell a joke, ask yourself, what's my intent? Am I using humor to connect, or am I hiding behind it? When you strike the right balance and use humor with purpose and confidence, you're not just funny, you're unforgettable. And hey, if all else fails, dad jokes are always a hit, unless they're absolutely terrible, in which case, maybe rethink your strategy. Bits to the story. There was someone who, let's say, wasn't the most motivated at work. He didn't care much about his job or what others thought. In fact, he seemed like he was always falling short. But here's where things take a twist. He had a perfectly valid reason for his behavior. He was spending his time taking care of a sick loved one. That moment, it struck me hard. My seemingly harmless chatter wasn't harmless at all. It was hurtful, and if I'm honest, a bit cruel. But here's the tough reality. When you gossip, people don't focus on the person you're putting down. They're thinking about your character instead. And let's talk about what happens when you don't gossip. When you refuse to engage in the drama, people notice. They start to see you as someone trustworthy, someone who doesn't need to bring others down to feel good about themselves. That's the kind of person people respect. I can tell you, when I stopped taking part in gossip, it shifted everything. Instead of joining in on those conversations where everyone's talking about someone, I'd just say something neutral like, "I hope they're doing okay." At first, it felt odd, like I was missing out on something. But with time, I noticed something. People began turning to me for advice instead of gossip. They saw me as someone who handled things maturely, not someone who'd weaponize someone else's private life. Here's a deeper insight. Gossip doesn't just harm others, it harms you too. It erodes your credibility, damages relationships, and even eats away at your self-respect. When you choose not to gossip, you're saying, "I'm better than that." You don't need to elevate yourself by tearing others down. That's where real respect comes from. Let's be real for a moment. When you're known as the one who always has the latest gossip, you're also known as someone who can't keep a secret. And you know what happens to those people? They don't get promoted, they aren't trusted with important information, and most of the time, they're left out when the real action happens. So yeah, maybe it's time to leave the gossip train behind. It's not taking you anywhere good. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be? Someone who spreads negativity and mistrust, or someone who lifts others up? Gossip may feel good in the moment, but respect is what endures. And respect isn't earned by spilling the tea. It's earned by being the person who refuses to pour it. Here's a tough truth. Most people talk too much. Yeah, I said it. And guess what? It's costing you respect. The uncomfortable reality is that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. But the urge to fill every silence with words, it's real, right? Let's get into it. Why do we do this? Why do we feel compelled to keep talking long after we've made our point? The answer is simple. It's insecurity. We think that if we stop talking, others might assume we're unsure or that we don't have enough to say, so we keep rambling, trying to prove how smart, funny, or important we are. Newsflash, talking too much doesn't make you look impressive. It makes you look unsure and, dare I say it, desperate. Let me share a lesson I learned the hard way. I was presenting an idea to a client, thinking I had absolutely nailed it. But instead of stopping and letting them process my brilliant point, I just kept going. I over-explained, added unnecessary details, and even tried to predict their questions before they could ask. By the end of it, they weren't nodding along. They were looking confused. After the meeting, my boss pulled me aside and said, "You had them for the first 30 seconds, but then you lost them. You need to learn when to stop talking." That hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized I wasn't giving people the space to process my words. I was smothering my own message. Here's the controversial part. Sometimes the more you talk, the less people listen. It's like trying to pour water into a glass that's already full. It just overflows and none of it sticks. Silence, on the other hand, commands attention. It makes your words resonate. When you stop talking, you create space for others to think, reflect, and engage. That's when respect starts to grow. I know it's hard. Silence can feel awkward. You say something, and instead of an immediate reaction, there's a pause. Your brain starts screaming, "Say something else, fill the gap." But here's the thing, that pause isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It's in those moments of silence that people digest what you've said and decide to take it seriously. Here's the deeper truth. Knowing when to stop talking isn't just about communication. It's about confidence. It's about believing your words have value without needing to back them up with endless explanations or fillers. It's about being okay with the discomfort of silence, knowing that it speaks louder than 1,000 words. And let me just say this, people remember the punch, not the ramble. Think about some of the most impactful speeches or moments in history. They weren't long-winded essays. They were sharp, concise, and to the point. There's a unique power in knowing when to stop talking. It's like leaving a party just as it's reaching its peak. You walk away leaving everyone wanting more, instead of them hoping you'll just leave. I've started applying this principle in my own life, especially with family. I used to be the one who couldn't stand silence, constantly filling the gaps with jokes or endless opinions. But one day, I decided to change that. I spoke my mind, then simply let the conversation flow on its own. The result? People started paying more attention. They wanted to hear my thoughts, rather than zoning out halfway through what I was saying. It was as if I had shifted from being background noise to becoming the focal point of the conversation. All because I started talking less. Here's what you can take from this. When you know when to stop speaking, you show others that you believe in the power of your words. You allow space for them to truly listen, to respect what you're saying, and to engage in a meaningful way. Of course, this takes practice. It requires some courage to embrace silence and let it work its magic. But once you get the hang of it, the impact is impossible to ignore. And if you're worried about leaving people in suspense, don't be. You're not dropping the ball, you're giving them the opportunity to pick it up. Next time you're in a conversation, try this. Express what you mean, then pause. Let the silence do its thing. Trust me, it'll say more than words ever could. See what I did there? All right, let's take a moment to get real. Respect isn't about memorizing a bunch of tricks or hacks. It's about showing up consistently, for yourself and for others, day after day. It's about owning your words, your presence, and the impact you make. Words are powerful. They can either build bridges or tear them down. They can make someone feel seen, or they can diminish them. The way you communicate doesn't just affect how others perceive you, it shapes how you view yourself. So, whether you're learning to stop apologizing unnecessarily, setting clear boundaries, or mastering the art of pausing, remember this: it all starts with you. If any of this resonated with you, or if you just enjoyed the conversation, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment letting me know which of these tips you're going to try out first. Or better yet, tell me your own secret to commanding respect in conversations. I'd love to hear it. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join the community where we talk real, share life hacks, and maybe crack a bad joke or two. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking your truth, and most importantly, keep being unapologetically you. Unless you're gossiping, then maybe dial that back. Catch you in the next one. Peace for all.